and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 109, and this is the Saturday news brief. This is the current economic collapse news. Before I get started, I just want to remind everyone, for those who have not listened to my report yesterday, on Sunday, I will be posting an interview with Greg Manarino. It will be sometime in the afternoon. Those people who signed up for the alerts to get the alerts when I upload a report, you will receive an email. For those who are not on the alert, you can sign up. It is free. I do not do anything with your information except send you once a day an email to let you know that the report has been uploaded. If you are on YouTube, I will be uploading the interview later, so if you don't want to wait, you can come back and check on the x22report.com site, or just wait for it to be uploaded on YouTube at a later time. But let's get into our news brief and see what's going on here. As we know, the federal government has been suing S&P because they downgraded them once before. And the U.S. government, central bankers, Fed, did not like this. They were very angry with S&P. So this time out, before S&P was able to rate them, the government decided to sue them. And of course, they're making their case. They're suing them because of the ratings they gave on the mortgage-backed securities, that they gave them all AAA, and they were really toxic, and so on and so forth. But we all know that this was to stop them from downgrading the United States again. And now S&P has come out and said, and I'll read this, U.S. rating agency Standard & Poor's told a court of law that it figured every reasonable investor would know its promise to objectively rate securities was mere puffery, like a used car salesman who tells you the last owner of your car was an old lady who only drove it on Sundays. And why are they saying this? Because they're getting sued. They want the government to back off. And plus, we also know that what do these ratings really mean? I mean, they're rating these mortgage-backed securities. People pay, the corporations pay these rating agencies to rate them. And what's happening here is that you really can't believe any of these rating agencies. Now, China and I think it's the BRIC nations that are coming out with their own rating agency, and they're going to compete against the Western rating agencies. And the reason why they're doing this is because of the corruption and what's going on with these rating agencies, that you really can't get a really good rating anymore, especially when the Fed is the entire market. The Fed is the stock market, the treasury bond market, the housing market. So what good are these rating agencies? Okay, let's move on here. Now, China is making a deal with Nigeria for oil, as they're becoming the world reserve currency. They want to basically use oil from other nations besides the Middle East. The Middle East, they don't want to rely on. Most of the oil there that is sold is through the dollar, and they are bypassing the dollar and making deals in other places. For example, they're purchasing oil from Iran, and now they want to purchase oil from Nigeria. And this goes on to say that China gave Nigeria $1.1 billion low-interest loan. It was announced this week, and in return, China can expect more Nigerian oil, going up from 20,000 barrels per day all the way up to 200,000 by 2015. Okay. Now, the Cypriot president says he hopes that they will not have to sell their gold. And every time an elected official comes out and tells you and starts talking about how they hope they're not going to do this, or they'll never do this, or this is not in the future, it's always the opposite. And right now, the Cypriot president said on Friday he hoped there would never be a need for the island to sell its gold reserves, stipulated in an international bailout for Cyprus. And he went on to say, I want to believe there will never be such a need. But as we all know, when times are tough and your back is against the wall and your country needs more money, guess what happens? He'll elect to sell the gold because he has no choice. And you have to remember, this whole test of bail-ins and bailouts, what are the central bankers really taking? Paper money. Their prize, their ultimate goal is to get natural resources and the gold in the country. And because the paper is just paper, they're the ones who are creating it. So why do they really want this? No, it's really the ability to force a country into handing over all its natural resources and gold and whatever physical assets they can get their hands on. And if they have to use the pressures of bailouts or bail-ins to do it, that's what they'll end up doing. Now, V, which is the guerrilla economist on the Steve Quayle site, which is stevequayle.com, set up a warning, and he's been right about quite a bit about gold being smacked down below 1,300, maybe even reaching 1,100, which we did see. It was in that range. It has gone up back to 1,200, and he is putting out a warning that the gold, the physical gold and precious metals will be drying up. And he went on to say, let me just read this. Folks, on July 9th, I have heard of the 320,000 ounce of gold going bye-bye from Brinks. That is 70% of their inventory. This is the second largest vault and transport logistic company outside of Switzerland. Now I am hearing that other smaller vaults are being hit as well, from Malka Amit in Singapore, G4S in the UK, and in Germany. Take this with what I have said and shown about the incredible demand for precious metals, as well the banksters trying to settle the debts, and you begin to see a very clear picture. So the trillion-dollar question is, where is all the gold going? It is going to the east, where the golden sun shines ever brightly, while the darkness of doom spreads from the inhabitants of the west. And we knew this time was going to come, and we knew that eventually the central bankers that had been caught with their pants down were going to start to gobble up all the gold. China has been gobbling up the gold. Russia has been gobbling up the gold. And pretty soon, eventually, there will be a time that no one will be able to get gold. Gold prices, silver prices, all other precious metals will start to rise. People will start to scramble to find where these precious metals are, and the price will continually rise and rise and rise because no one will be able to get them. All right, let's move on here. Now, Israeli plans military revolution, and what this goes on is Israel, the most powerful and best equipped in the Middle East. They are changing. Older tanks and aircraft will be retired, some 4,000 or so, maybe even more, and they are doing this to prepare for World War III, which is coming. They are seeing the unrest in the Middle East. United States government is telling them to prepare, and we see the buildup all around the world. We see the buildup with China, with Russia, with Japan, now with Israel. The United States is building up their armed forces and their fleets in the Middle East. Also in Japan, we are seeing drills, and this is all being done to cover up the economic collapse. So the central bankers and the U.S. government are not blamed for what is coming. And with a war, the central bankers make money. They don't care who dies. They don't care who wins, because in the end, they will start the system over again. Okay. Now, the Pentagon is, what they're doing is they are building up their assets in Southeast Asia. The Pentagon, up to 2020, will transfer more air power, including tactical aircraft and bombers, U.S. Army troops and Marines, and a variety of high-tech weaponry to the Asia Pacific. It doesn't matter that they're downsizing and there's no budget, and there's they're going to do this to build up, to prepare for, again, the war. And this is what they're doing. And China is not convinced the pivoting is not about containment. And how can you assure China, how can you balance the two different objectives to assure allies and to build a positive relationship with China? And General Qui Henguo, Deputy Chief of the General Staff, was asking this question. And Hagel didn't answer. And he basically came out and said what all politicians say, basically politician babble. U.S. welcomes a strong and emerging and responsible China. He did evoke dialogue to reduce the risk of miscalculation, particularly between our militaries. And what's happening right now is the U.S. government is building up their assets in the Middle East. They're building it up with Israel. They're building it up with Japan. And this is eventually going to turn out to be a major war. We see many exercises taking place. We saw Russia and China doing their exercises near Japan. We saw other exercises in the Middle East. We saw the U.S. With their naval exercises with South Korea. And in the Middle East, we saw the drills with Japan and other countries on attacking an island and confiscating an island. So we're seeing this happen all over, and there is a reason for this. This is the beginning of World War III. Okay, now in other news, we see Russia mobilizing 160,000 troops after U.S. officials confirm that Israel took out Russian missiles in Syria. And what we're seeing is in Moscow, they put out a notice on July 13th. The armed forces of Russia today at 1 MSK began the most ambitious in their history of post-Soviet test readiness. This was reported by the Press Service Management and Information, the Defense Ministry. And we see that this is all building up all around the world because Russia knows what's coming, China knows what's coming. The propaganda of letting the people of Europe and the U.S. know that China has been attacking the U.S. with cyber attacks. All of this is propaganda to lead into war. Now, Syria is having a major problem with the rebel fighting. The rebel FSA declares war on Al-Qaeda. They were fighting together. The paid mercenaries were working together with these two groups, which is Al-Qaeda is the paid mercenaries. And they're starting to fight. What happened there was, let me see here. Yeah, there have been skirmishes between Syrian rebel factions, and they're reaching a whole new level today with the Free Syrian Army, the largest secular rebel group, declaring war on the Jabhat al-Nusra, the Al-Qaeda-linked Islamic faction that is seen as the frontline fighters for most of the war's major battles. And basically this is falling apart, and I mean the benefit would be to the Assad government if the rebels are fighting amongst themselves. But this problem goes further. You have to remember the central bankers. The U.S. government needs to get into Syria to move on to Iran. They need to get the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, because this is the whole entire mission of all of this, is to keep the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency throughout the world. The government and the central bankers are fighting all over the world to keep the U.S. dollar intact, but we see that they are losing the battle. China, Russia, Australia, India, Canada, Switzerland. A lot of these countries are starting to move away from the US dollar as the reserve currency. They're starting to trade with China without using the US dollar, and the empire of US is kind of losing this battle right now. And with this problem in Syria, they're going to have to do something to get the United States government back into Syria with an all-out war. And the only way to do this, you have to remember, there have been surveys that have been taken, and like 70% or so say they're not interested in war, that we should not be involved with Syria. But what needs to happen here is the U.S. government, the central bankers, need to do something to force and to have the people of America beg for war in Syria. And the only way to do this is with some type of horrific false flag event. And this could happen in New York City with the chemical drill. It could happen with the biological drills, with the National Scout Jamboree, which is supposedly a secret FEMA drill. And there are many other biological drills. And listen, there are many other potential false flags out there because there are many other drills that we just don't know about. So it could be anything. It could be dirty bombs. It could be who knows, but something will occur, some type of event that will be horrific, bloody, to bring us into war with Syria. Okay, let's move on here. Now, there was another drill with helicopters that terrorized Port Angeles, and this happened at 11:15 at night. And these helicopters were flying low, pointing spotlights. And again, I said this before, we've seen this in Miami, we've seen this in Houston, we saw drills in LA, and now we're seeing more. As we see more and more of these drills in the populated areas, they are getting prepared to handle the collapse. Again, I went down a list that I had. When we see more taxes, when we see more military drills, when we see more rights taken away from the American people, all of this leads up to the collapse because they need to get everything in order and people trained and ready to do this. And this report went on to say the helicopters, Hodger said, they were 4 CH-47 Chinooks, twin-engine, tandem-rotor, heavy-lifted helicopters, big, heavy machines. They make a lot of noise, especially when they operate near water. We're over Port Angeles from 11:15 to shortly before midnight. Residents say they were awakened from their sleep, and the spotlights stabbed down from the low-flying helicopters into their backyards. And this was a very scary event for the residents. They were not warned. The police were not warned of this. This was a surprise type of drill. Now, moving on. The secret cyber war. Infiltration, sabotage, mayhem for years. Four-star General Keith Alexander has been building a secret army capable of launching devastating cyber attacks. Now it's ready to unleash hell. General Alexander has been using cyber attacks on Iran with the Stuxnet. They were able to disable the nuclear facility, but that is not all they can do. They can do a lot more. In its tightly controlled public relations, the NSA has focused attention on the threat of cyber attacks against the U.S., the vulnerability of critical infrastructure like power plants and water systems, the susceptibility of the military command and control structure, the dependence of the economy on the Internet's smooth functioning. Defense against these threats was a paramount mission trumpeted by NSA brass at congressional hearing and hashed over at security conferences. The military has for years been developing offensive capabilities, giving it the power not just to defend the U.S., but to assail its foes. Using so-called cyber-kinetic attacks, Alexander and his forces now have the capability to physically destroy an adversary's equipment and infrastructure, and potentially even to kill. And we've said this before, the main event will be the cyber attacks. They do have the ability to blow out generator, to take down the infrastructure, and we've seen this in Iran, to disable a nuclear power plant, and this will be happening here. This will be the main false flag. If all of these other false flags do not happen, those that are going to take away more rights, like the gun confiscation, to get the gun bill that is pending in the Senate passed, to get CISPA passed, to get us into war with Syria, to have mini cyber attacks, to rob the people of their money, and maybe that way getting us into war. They're going to try many different things, but the main event will be the cyber attack. It will put the U.S. and other nations into darkness to prove that another country attacked us. And according to the United States government, a cyber attack is an act of war. It's equal to a nuclear attack. And there was another article that could the U.S. government go dark? During a targeted cyber attack, government agencies go dark. Mission-critical data is inaccessible. Personal information of millions of U.S. citizens is exposed. Communications are cut off. The White House is literally and figuratively in the dark. And they go on to say that, you know, the Science Board for the Pentagon and other government and defense organizations found that today's cyber threat is insidious, enabling adversaries to access vast new channels of intelligence about critical U.S. enablers. They can threaten our national and economic security. If the United States is ever under a full-scale cyber attack, the report goes on to state, the weapons of what could very well be mass destruction might include denial of service attacks, infrastructure corruption, data corruption, and supply chain interruptions, among many other things. And we are going to see this. What I believe will happen, if they need to use this main event, they will hit the power infrastructure. People will go into darkness. People will be okay in the first, 1 to 2 days. People start to get worried when the power is still out after 4, 5, 6, 7 days. People will run out of food. People will start rioting. They will start moving into supermarkets and raiding the shelves of supermarkets. Once the food runs out there and people are still in darkness, they will start moving from home to feed their families. The United States government will then declare martial law because of all the rioting. And if they haven't already, for the safety of the people, we need everyone to turn in their weapons. And in the meantime, the banks would have been robbed of most of the money of people's accounts will be drained. And when the power comes on, this will all be blamed on China, Russia, Syria, Iran, whoever they want to blame this on. A lot of people will die. There will be disease. People will be sick, angry, pissed. Money will be gone. And the American people eventually will then beg for war. And we see that this is coming. There was an article about a warning America's next false flag. As we all know, Obama signed the new executive order where he takes control of all communications. He has a type of kill switch on the internet, and this goes on to say, as government approval ratings fall to all-time lows, the control of information is critical to keep the population under control. Day by day, people are waking up in masses to government lies and corruption. To counter this awakening, the Pentagon is policing the internet, looking for extremist political activity. What is the definition of extremist political activity? There is one, but don't worry, it's broad enough to get every activist and alternative news source labeled as a threat, and possibly even shut down in the name of terrorism. First, the government has to manufacture a threat. hiring hackers to access your financial records and empty the starving middle class bank accounts would be all they need to get everyone to support the creation of a more secure internet and to shut it down for a period of time and to be monitored and controlled. Like I said in the past, when the Federal Reserve was created, they wanted two things. One, control the money. Two, control the flow of information. Five corporations own the mainstream media. The only loose cannon is the internet with alternative media, other news channels, and they have no control over this. And more people are waking up. More and more people are listening, and we need to spread the word and let everyone know what is going on. Listen, we have many different false flags coming up next week. We have the cyber drill quantum dawn 2. Now remember, these are all potential. Am I saying these are going to happen? No. These are warnings of what could happen. Because in the past, from history, we see whenever there is a drill, for some reason, somehow, something happens. So we see the National Scout Jamboree with a biological FEMA drill, which is on July 15th. July 18th is a cyber drill, and there are additional biological and chemical drills going on. And there are other drills we just don't know about because they keep them a secret. These are all potential. These are warnings to keep us awake and aware and prepared. That's what this is for. Listen, everyone, again, on Sunday, I'm going to have the interview with Greg Marino, and be sure to tune in and listen to that interview. Listen, everyone, be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.